yeah. Sorry, Jason, I need to get the okay from you to start.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good to go.
Okay, we are good to go. Okay, thank you. All right, welcome everyone to this workshop. I'm very excited about it. It's an issue that's near and dear to, I think, all of our hearts. And so we're excited to learn about get the updates on youth justice transformation, centering well-being, prevention, and restoration beyond detention reform. I just want to remind everyone that the board workshop is recorded and it is live streamed on Zoom webinar. There will be no votes taken during this workshop. And we're going to start with an introduction of commissioners and presenters around the table, and then we'll do the rest of the room. So I'm going to start with, well, I'm Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner from District 2.
Tara Jevon Singh, Commissioner from District 1.
Rafael Ortega, Commissioner, District 5.
Garrison McMurtry, Commissioner, District 3.
Kelly Miller, Commissioner, District 7.
Gloria Reyes, Deputy County Manager for the Safety and Justice Service Team.
Elijah Norris Holiday, Planning Manager for the Office of Safety and Justice.
Nadir Abdi, Deputy County Manager, Health and Wellness Service Team.
Lynn Becker, County Manager. Rena Moran, County Commissioner, District 4.
Great. And why don't we just, let's just start at the end there. Yeah.
Dana Master, Director of Innovation and Strategy for the Health Monitor. Karen Francois, Deputy County Manager for the Information and Public Records Service.
Good.
I'm Kate Dean with the W. Haywood Bruns Institute.
Alex Cleveland, Public Services Manager.
My name is Katya, I'm going to training specialist. William Ray, Chief of Staff.
And people are going to need to speak up because we actually have a microphone up here. So speak up. Yeah, why don't we go to the first? We'll just, zigzag. First row.
You don't do the director of communication. Good morning, Dorina Gulubna, your representative of gas. Commissioner McGuire.
And Narina is interning with, is just shadowing me today from Ukraine. So, yeah.
Christy Cobbs, Planning Specialist with Ramsey County. Mallory Potter, Planner with Community Corrections. Clerk Pillsbury, Planning and Evaluation Families with Community Corrections. Good for Chief Financial Officer. Amy Wassler, Government Relations. Jen Hamrick, Policy and Planning. Holly Pratt, Deputy Director of Workforce Solutions.
That is like the most efficient introduction of people. You are all so competent. You just knew what to do. Good job, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So today's workshop highlights Ramsey County's commitment to reimagining youth justice through the Youth Justice Transformation Initiative. Building on nearly 20 years of reform, this work centers well-being, prevention, and restoration. Grounded in equity and healing, Youth Justice Transformation supports youth and families through care, not punishment. Aligned with county priorities, it reduces disparities and expands community-based responses. I want to thank our staff and partners for leading on this important work. And I just want to say that this has been work that I've done from my days in the legislature to here and serving on Public Safety Committee. I know Commissioner Moran, we all so care about this work. It's just, we're just so grateful to you, all of you that are working on it. And I know you're going to talk about the NACO meeting that you had and that we were highlighting this work, and people from around the country were so impressed and amazed at the work that we're doing. So I know you're going to talk a little bit about that. Elijah was amazing. So, but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gloria Reyes, our Deputy County Manager.
Great. Good morning and thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and County Manager Becker. Thank you for inviting us today to today's workshop focused on justice system transformation. Today we'll present to you two workshops. This morning focused on our youth justice system transformation, and this afternoon our focus is on healing and treatment homes. These sessions is an opportunity to take a deeper look at the path we are on and the path we are building for youth, families, and communities in Ramsey County. We are here because we believe in the power of transformation. Our goal is to improve a system that wasn't built for all of our youth and to reimagine it from the ground up with equity and healing at the center. Across the country, and here at home, we are witnessing a critical shift in how our youth justice is understood and practiced. We've seen the harm that punitive and carceral systems cause, particularly for Black, Indigenous, and youth of color, and for our youth struggling with trauma, poverty, or behavioral health needs. Ramsey County has committed to a bold direction, one that prioritizes prevention, accountability, without harm, and community-rooted solutions. We know that we cannot do this alone. Transformation requires partnership with youth and families who have been directly impacted, community-based organizations and advocates, law enforcement, the courts, schools, and service providers. This work also involves deep collaboration between Ramsey County service teams, health and wellness, and the safety and justice service team, workforce solutions, housing stability, Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, and the Ramsey County Attorney's Office, just to name a few. Today, we invite you, your insights, your guidance to shape the path forward together. Because when we get youth justice right, we change not only the trajectory of young people, but we change the health and safety of our entire community. So our presenters today, I will hand it over to, I will hand it over to Nadir, and then Elijah Norris Holiday will conduct the presentation for us today. It was working before.
Yeah.
Sat idle too long, maybe.
All right,
We can move it to the next slide.
yeah. Thank you, Gloria. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for having us. It's great to be here with you all today. So in this slide here in 2020, youth justice stakeholders came together to reevaluate the governance structure of the JDAI. And in those conversations, stakeholders expressed concerns about the significant overlap in communities and committee meetings, and the lack of engagement from both external and internal partners, breakdown in communication, and challenges in decision-making. The YJT coordinator at that time restructured the governance of the JDAI to clarify the roles and the committees and expand decision-making authority to broader stakeholders and groups, and established the steering committee to assist with oversight and planning for the YJT. In this next slide, I won't read through each of the names, but I wanted to express my heartfelt appreciation for all the partnerships within the ecosystem. This list reflects the dedication of our system partners, community-based organization, and national network. It's a testament to the collective effort that we're all putting into this important mission. It truly takes a village to achieve meaningful change. And we feel incredibly fortunate to have so many committed individuals and organizations join us on this journey. So I just wanted to say one more time, I just wanted to thank everyone that's on this list, because it does truly take a village to do this work. So I'm very appreciative as I come into this work at this stage of it. And I think the next few slides that Elijah will go through, you'll see the incredible work that has been done and all the partners that came together to kind of achieve this work. So thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager Becker, thank you again for the opportunity to provide the board with an overview of the youth justice transformation work. I know our work has been referenced by several commissioners who serve as steering and stakeholder committee members for YJT, but this is the first time that we're able to provide an elevated overview of the youth justice transformation work happening in Ramsey County. And although we won't have time to dive deep into all the aspects of YJT, we will provide some historical context of youth justice reform efforts in Ramsey County, the evolution of JDAI, or the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. We'll provide an overview of some of our goals and programs of YJT, and we'll talk about how our work aligns with countywide priorities, and we will end with noting some of the next steps for youth justice transformation in Ramsey. So the next few slides that I'll be sharing with you all provide some insight into early struggles in Ramsey County within the youth justice system prior to Ramsey County adopting the framework of JDAI some 25 years ago. So prior to 2005, it was very common for JDC to experience overcapacity into the facility. The facility often had issues with double bunking, annual admissions exceedingly well over 2,800 youth in any given year. The capacity for the JDC, I think, is like 44 young people. It was common to have 80 or plus young people in the juvenile detention facility at that time before we engaged in the JDAI initiative. During this era, all youth that were brought to the doors of detention from law enforcement were detained, regardless of the seriousness of the delinquency. This often resulted in young people being detained for status offenses, which are actions that are only considered a crime due to the age of the person committing the act. And examples of this include truancy, curfew, running away from home, possession or consumption of tobacco or alcohol. Now, we all can acknowledge that this behavior should be taken seriously because of the potential harm that it causes to young people. However, arresting and detaining these young youth for status offenses often caused more trauma and further system involvement, which did more harm than it did good. And so, acknowledging this, Ramsey County leadership, law enforcement, community members, and other stakeholders took note of these issues and decided that they would seek youth justice reform in Ramsey County. So under the leadership of, at the time, Commissioner Carter, community leaders, Ramsey County Board of Commissioners, and other stakeholders, Ramsey County decided to adopt the JDI National Framework from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. Along with that came funding support for technical assistance, best practices, and some money to stay engaged in the JDAI framework provided by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And so this work happened through a board presentation and then by adopting a resolution to focus on reducing disproportionate minority contact, which seeks to decrease or shrink the representation of youth of color, specifically Black and Native youth in the youth justice system at every intersection of system involvement, including point of contact with law enforcement, detention, probation, and out-of-home placement. This resolution was really the catalyst for youth justice reform in Ramsey County in 2005. So from 2005 to about 2009, stakeholders began to meet to determine the purpose of the work, to establish alternatives for detention. They developed a criterion for detention and a plan to development of the objective screening tool, which we call the risk assessment instrument here in Ramsey County, to determine the appropriate setting for youth brought to detention. And of that, the purpose of the work was to reduce unnecessary detention and out-of-home placements for young people, to establish successful and effective alternatives to detention. They also developed the criterion that young people should only be detained for public safety risk, or if there was reason to believe that the young person would fail to appear for that first initial court hearing. So an FTA for failure to appear. They also want to prioritize public safety and to develop positive youth outcomes and centered around equity for young people. One of the most significant accomplishments I believe that came out of this work was the development of the objective screening tool, the risk assessment instrument, or RAY, to assess the appropriate setting for youth engaging in delinquency. As I noted earlier, any young person that was brought into the doors of detention from law enforcement was detained prior to Ramsey County adopting the risk assessment tool. So here's a list of some of the early stakeholders that were part of the work some 25 years ago. This collaborative group came together to discuss the issues that Ramsey County was facing and to come up with solutions. And although a lot of the people from those positions have left, those positions and the people that have filled those roles continue to be committed to continuing to provide better outcomes for youth and families that are impacted by the youth justice system.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes, Commissioner Miller.
Can you go at that slide right there? Are parents involved and are youth involved? I see in the first slide that you gave us, you mentioned that there's a youth advisory council. Is that still active and engaging? Because I just think of, these are a lot of external stakeholders that are at the table to come up with the solution, but at what point did you involve community and the youth involved and the families? Because they kind of go hand in hand.
We did have a youth advisory council that
So that's no longer active?
It's no longer active
Okay.
currently. There was a lot of transition happening at the time. And we sunsetted it for now, until we really reevaluate, the direction of our youth justice transformation efforts. It was coming to an end anyway, the contracts with the young people.
Okay.
And so, but now it really is a time for us to really figure out what does our youth advisory councils look like, not only for the youth justice transformation efforts, but broadly within the county. in making sure that we are engaging. There were multiple youth councils across the county, and so we really need to think about utilizing our young people in a way that's beneficial for them and more impactful for them. And so that's the work that we're doing with Power Within Us now, and so we'll talk about that in later slides, but we are really looking at what our youth advisory councils look like within a broader county infrastructure.
Mhm.
And in the absence of,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, no.
Yeah, and in the absence of us having a youth advisory council, we still do engage young people. We're engaging young people through the St. Paul Aspire program currently that we're supporting through the Office of Safety and Justice. We're engaged with World Youth Connect and other different capacities. We also invite young people to our Youth Justice Transformation stakeholder convenings. Young people are being brought there from Healing Streets. And then other also entities that we're engaging with in the community. And so we do center, and there's parents also present and active stakeholders as well in the YJT stakeholder convenings. And I think at this time, for the historical context piece, there were parents, there were young people that were involved in some of those early decision making. But mine, this is from 2005 to about 2009.
To 2009. Okay, thank you. And County Manager Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think what Gloria's talking about is when that transition sort of happened, I had asked the team if we might consider leveraging youth as they engage in other organizations rather than us having our own youth advisory board. There are so many youth-led, youth-engaged organizations that we can partner with. So this is one of those opportunities to partner rather than do our own thing. And so I think exactly what Elijah's talking about, working with the organizations that already exist and supporting them rather than building up our own advisory committee. It allows us to kind of find different alignments based on topics or even like geography or age group, because then we don't have to have the one size fits all. It actually exists out in the community. So
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, continue, please.
So these two slides represent the significant progress that we've made early on in youth justice transformation or youth justice reform. And through this collaborative approach to youth justice reform, the utilization of the RAY, the uses of ATDs, alternatives to detention, Ramsey County has reduced JDC admissions and average daily population every year since the start of JDAI. This ultimately means that yet less young people are admitted into the facility, remaining in the community to receive the support and resources that they need without being exposed to the trauma that becomes of being detained in a secured facility. And so I just wanted to take a moment just to pause for you all to take a look at these two graphs. You can see in 2005, we had about 333 young people, over 333 young people that were admitted into the JDC facility. At that time, we just adopted the framework of JDAI, and every single year beyond that, we've noticed significant declines in JDC admissions of young people coming into the facility and being detained. Also, we've noticed a drop in the average daily population, which is the amount of young people that are in the facility at any given day.
Okay, amazing. First of all, Commissioner Jevon Singh and then Commissioner Miller.
So when I was looking at this graph earlier, the idea that there was that initial drop in the JDC emissions from 2005 to 2010. So you can see that initial work, right? What was in place at that time as an alternative for the youth? And I guess what I mean by that is, as we know, as our conversation or the proclamation earlier today with the mental health system, the idea of to move folks from institutions that are harming them is a laudable goal, but to do that without, and then to what supports and care are we wrapping around these kids in that time too? I'm wondering what, at that time, historically, what was available and what we're rebuilding out at that point, do you know?
Yes, I'll answer that. So I think there was a multitude of different respite shelters that Ramsey County had available to them that we could call, and we could send young people to go stay in the respite shelters for emergency respite shelter services without having to detain them in the JDC facility. But also, this is me speculating because I wasn't around during those times, but I think there was a lot of conversations I've had with Commissioner Carter and other stakeholders that are older than me, my mentors, was that it was a really collaborative effort from everyone in the community with law enforcement, not locking kids up for status level offenses anymore. So bringing them to the JDC for those things that could be addressed in community, or they can bring them home to their parent or guardian to address those delinquency matters that they were engaging in. I think also contributed to the success in dropping those JDC admissions, but also the usage of those respite shelters that Ramsey County had at that time.
And then the other side to that is that we see that even through the next, 15 years of work, there's still, we've dropped it down to an average daily population below 30 consistently. I guess my question is, will there always be a need for a setting like this for some pocket of youth? And when I say setting like this, I don't mean our current JDC, but I mean, some kind of a secured facility for public safety, for their own safety, because of the severity of maybe some of the behaviors that they're involved in. And I'm just curious, or is our vision that no child will ever have to not be in, I want to hear what the vision is for that as we kind of get closer.
If you're asking me that question, I think the vision is always to prioritize keeping young people out of secure detention facilities, providing enough support up front, wrapping around them early on in their lives where they don't engage in delinquency, and serious level crimes that lead to them being detained in secure facilities. So to answer your question, yes, I do see in our future being able to not even have a juvenile detention facility because we became so well at having alternatives to detention, being able to utilize diversion, being able to have mentorship in community, and being able to wrap around our young people when we start to see the signs of them engaging in some of those early delinquencies that lead to more serious crimes.
And I also think that, having a JDC for young people who really need it, right? Who are, there are some safety concerns, right? I think, but really reimagining our JDC where we bring in supportive services to help young people while they're there, right? It's sort of an opportunity to stabilize them, right? But infuse them with education, therapy, in a very holistic way. Because, we are going to find ourselves in situations where young people do commit serious crimes. We always want to, focus on the prevention efforts, but if they're committing serious crimes and they have to go to the JDC because there's a charge, they've been arrested, that's the reality, is really building a JDC that is very holistic and supportive services is sort of the vision of the future.
So if we have to use it, it needs to be therapeutic. It needs to be responsive to the young people's needs, and then to really help them put them on the pathway of being successful. Youth, young adults.
Feeds my soul to hear all of that. Yeah, great.
So
Commissioner Miller.
Yep, so my question is kind of similar to Commissioner Jevonsing, is if we're seeing a drop, which is fabulous in admissions and daily populations, but are we seeing, what's the data that shows, are they just being charged like with a citation, a ticket, and then being sent home or being then brought to a group home? So I guess I'm just curious that this doesn't show the picture of who's still involved in our justice system with not the serious offenses where they're being admitted to the JDC. So do we have that data, or is that something we have access to through maybe the court system or through?
Yeah, I mean, do we have data coming up, or
So
we can get back, we can respond with data as a
Okay.
follow-up.
So
Thank you.
the trend, so we can respond with additional data. We do collect those data points. Our community corrections evaluation team, they're in the back, so I'm sure they're taking notes. And we'll follow up with you for sure. But I can tell you that from me looking at the data, there's been a significant drop in misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, petty misdemeanor offenses coming into the JDC that attributes to us seeing those low admissions numbers and low daily population. And the youth that we are seeing being admitted to the JDC are those youth committing violent level felonies.
Thank you. Commissioner McMurtry. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done, Commissioner Miller?
Kind of, but maybe it's a follow-up question that it's okay.
Yeah, and I'll call on, you
Yeah.
can go again. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner McMurtry, and then Commissioner Jean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think you get to this, you mentioned placement, and this is kind of the piggyback off of Commissioner Jefferson and Commissioner Miller. So I've had a chance to go to the JC a couple of times, and the second to last time that I went, I visited one of the pods. There were like, I don't know, 10 to 12 youth that were in that particular pod. And when I went back, there were only 2 left in there. And that was because they were placed in other places. Some went home, some I believe they said went to Red Wing, some went to other places. So I guess my question is, when we're looking at the placement of those youth in those other places aside from home, what's the process? What do those placements mean? Like, for instance, when you get sent to Red Wing, is that is that going in the right direction, or is that a setback? Like, how do we work with those youth to ensure that ultimately the ultimate placement is for them to go home?
So to answer your question, the youth that go to Red Wing are youth that are adjudicated. We don't use language like sentence in the youth justice space. We use the term adjudicated, which means that a judge has determined that they're in need of some type of supportive services, whether that be cognitive mental health issues, that they need to go seek support for, chemical dependency, any type of behavioral health that they need to have resources for and access to. They would send them to a placement to receive those support and those programming. So we don't sentence kids, we adjudicate kids to different programs. And so the kids that have gone home, they were probably admitted to the JDC. There probably was an attempt to reach the parent. For whatever reason, the parent was delayed in coming to get their kid. Eventually, they were able to make contact with the parent or the guardian, and they released that kid back to parent or to guardian. In an ideal world, we would have alternatives to detention stood up, which we're working on now, which I'll talk about in a few slides moving forward. Those young people that would be eligible for release but couldn't go home to a parent or guardian, would go to the alternative to detention, which would be a respite shelter, which would be in community, and that's pre-adjudication.
Thank you. Commissioner Jean, and then,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given these numbers and just it's a steep decline, is how may the county proactively shape our public messaging around juvenile crime to reflect this reality? Because, with media, like they're always just trying to like lift up the worst things of our young people too. So how may we proactively message about the work that we are doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really a great point. We are working with our communications team to develop a communications plan for how we can share not only the quantitative data, but the qualitative data around how our young people are doing, right? And tell the real stories and the work that we are doing. That I can say we have not done a good job at that. I think that we have been really working internal and working on dismantling these systems. But we are at a really good time now to reshape the messaging that is shared with our community, because these numbers are going down. They consistently are going down, right? Our efforts are demonstrating success, and we need to showcase that in many different ways of communication to our community. Yeah. But, I mean, I think the big thing is like, we're still seeing disparities, right? And so we don't want to like go out too soon that we are doing an amazing work, right? But we do want to tell our story.
May I follow up
yes,
on that?
Commissioner Jean.
Yeah, I mean, I think while those disparities exist, it is equally important to paint a fuller picture about that. And it's very important to talk about that because, I've been on YJT for the last 2.5 some years, and, we aren't even keeping track of the data about the families, households, like their income, right? And I bet you, I can like knowing where the kids are from, having the breakdown of where they are in 55117 in North End and 55106. Those are all very low income household geographically. And there is a need to state that, it's the disparities of not just that it's really from, how our economic barriers and lack of opportunity.
Right.
And that's why we do need to go upstream there. So I think it should paint a holistic picture of what is happening.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Jemison.
Well, and I love the way you just framed that, Commissioner Jean, because I think it's not so much great, and while we want to talk about the progress and the good work that's being done, it's more uplifting the idea of why this work exists in the first place. So the idea of being able to indicate that, so when I look back at that timeline, I think of my own family and where they fall into this timeline. And when my boys were hitting that time of, so our family benefited from this program. My oldest son was flagged because of truancy, and it was the first time that we were able to really tap into what was the beginning of an onset of a very serious mental illness. There was no harm or crimes to the community at all. And because of the shifts that were already in the county, instead of a punishment, there was a referral. that got him into mental health services that were detrimental to his health and wellness, right? So, and when I would see some of the friends that he had as a child of color and all of his different friends from, sometimes the true or the being out after dark had to do with economic disparities, the idea of lack of parents working multiple jobs trying to string together who was watching who, and it could just be picked up because they're going from auntie's house to the house at 10 o'clock at night on your own bike because that's how you could get home, right? So the idea of being able to even if it's not singing the praises of we've gotten there yet, but the reason for this work, which is to recognize that we were incarcerating kids for being kids who were facing challenges rather than kids who were doing criminal behavior, and separating that to the handful of kids who maybe are making some choices that hopefully we could catch everybody before they found themselves in that life mortgaging situation. But at some point, some kids do, some people, some things happen, they're awful, right? But when we go from 3,000 to 30, that means that those 2,500 other kids were just being kids, right? So that's the story I think that I think is really important. And we don't have to be all there yet to make sure to remind ourselves. Because I think in community sometimes when people talk about public safety and fear mongering, the idea that somehow we're just giving a free pass to folks who are making our communities unsafe is not the true story for the bulk of the folks that are being, redirected and wrapped around with services that they need.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
Thank you.
I'm so honored to be on this board when I hear these comments. Amazing. Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Lash. Oh, sorry.
So after about 10 years of noticing some success on the front end of detention reform, in 2018, stakeholders came together once again to discuss further reform efforts. Those meetings led to community corrections taking on the work of probation transformation and deep end reform. And essentially what that consists of is young people that are placed on probation, young folks that are certified as EJJ, so extended juvenile jurisdiction, and young people that are placed in out-of-home placement. So that's adjudication. The role of juvenile probation and youth justice transformation is to foster fair, equitable, and positive outcomes for youth on supervision through promoting positive behavior change and healthy development while prioritizing community safety and holding young people on supervision accountable to probation rules, court orders, and case plans. Our juvenile probation is pretty unique. Young people can be placed on juvenile probation from age 10 to 24. That's different than most jurisdictions. The jurisdiction for juvenile probation typically ends at 18, but I'm noticing now through the work that the A&E Casey Foundation is now doing on a national level, we're seeing a lot of jurisdictions now starting to shift focus to providing juvenile casework, case planning for young people ages 18 to 24, which they're calling their emerging adult population. So this is becoming a national trend now, but Ramsey County was years ahead of the curve on this. We're providing services to young people up to age of 24 on juvenile probation caseloads.
Excuse me, Elijah, we have a question from Commissioner.
Do you think the increase up to 24 has something to do with the brain development?
Absolutely, absolutely. That was one of the primary motivators around a lot of jurisdictions increasing that age of jurisdiction was the research that's been done around adolescent brain development.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Miller.
Are you seeing with increasing that age limit that the reoffenses or that rate of successful completion has been better? I mean, if you think historically it's just 18, you're now adult and you're on adult probation, but you're still, like you said, brain's not fully developed. So you go and recommit or reoffend and back into the system.
I've been noticing that young people that are able to get service on the juvenile probation caseload have better outcomes, in my opinion, than young people that are just transferred over to adult probation. I think it's an opportunity for the young people to have more individualized support through having a juvenile probation officer. They're a lot more lenient and understanding when young people make mistakes, unlike the adult system. And so I do feel like, anecdotally, I've noticed better outcomes when young people are placed on juvenile probation up to the age of 24 than if they were just transferred over to adult probation at 18. Yeah.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does
Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
And I'm curious, and I apologize for asking what may be a really foundational question, but in juvenile, the probation program, and then in the adult probation program, how much, if any, also involves counseling support, education services, anything that may be needed for the families that these individuals are attached to?
So I know our juvenile probation department does engage family and youth. They do have an ISF fund that's accessible to not only the youth, but also the family. Families are encouraged to be a part of the young person's case plan, and our probation officers and community corrections are very intentional with making sure that they can engage not only the family, but the guardian and other loved ones that support that young person, right? Because we know young people don't just depend on their family, right? They have friends, they have girlfriends, they have boyfriends, they have people in their lives that support them throughout their transitions. And so I believe our probation team is very conscious of that and very intentional about engaging all of the people that support that young person.
Yeah, and I also think about things that not all homes are always stabilized themselves.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the idea of a youth may be making choices that make sense in the environment that they're in or in the home that they're in. So the idea of being able to find ways of stabilizing that house or helping a youth find a safer place to be until things are back in alignment back home, if that makes sense, you know, and I say that in a way of knowing that all homes look different. I don't mean to say that there has to be a uniform way of a home being, but you know, there could be a you know, for whatever reason, a disruption in a place where going home at that particular moment for that child is not going to be the right place. And I think that may be something we're talking about later on in our workshop this afternoon as well, right?
Absolutely. Keeping young people closer to home where they have the most support and access to resources that they need to be successful. They'll all be touched on in the afternoon. So community corrections utilizes a community-based continuum of services for youth and families. This includes in-home family therapy, intensive case management for youth returning to the community from an out-of-home placement, restorative justice programming, including coaching, mentoring, and coaching community circles. And then I also mentioned that individualized youth and family support fund that youth and families can have access to. And we'll talk about some of the work that we're doing to expand that eligibility for that ISF fund as well in a few slides.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
ISF?
Yes, individualized support fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. One other, what is
Yes.
what is a COG group facilitation?
I have some friends from community corrections.
Phone a friend.
In the back.
And
Cognitive, they want to know the specifics around the cognitive group facilitation or programming that takes place.
That would be like decision points,
Yes.
programs and curriculums that are designed to change the cognition to get you to think about something differently. So I know in my time in community corrections, which was during this time, a lot of those groups were being offered like in the community at libraries, but were also court ordered by the judge to attend a cognitive phase.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
yes, we should identify, that was Christy.
Christy Cobbs,
Christy
who now
Cobbs,
works at Worksession.
Community corrections, thank you for
but
your
nowhere of
answer.
all things.
Next time we should bring you up to the mic. Sorry.
And so during this time, community corrections with their probation team also developed a specialized caseload. These are young people that could be at risk for sexual exploitation, young people identified as a crossover youth or dual status youth. You'll often hear those two terms used interchangeably. That essentially just means that the young person has an open social services case, and they also have an open juvenile delinquency case as well. They may be assigned a social worker, and they may also be assigned a probation officer at the same time. High-risk youth, youth that are on EJJ, extended juvenile jurisdiction, youth with sex offenses, low-risk youth, moderate risk youth, and then I also talked about that transitional age or the emergent adult age, 18 to 24.
Can I just ask one clarifying, when you mention like open like social services, that means their family is a part of the child protection service or them as an individual, or both?
It could be both.
Okay.
Yep, it could be both. Yeah.
Okay,
It just means that they would have an assigned social worker.
that's
and-
working with their family.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, while they're also navigating a juvenile delinquency case at the same time.
so does that ever, whenever a juvenile delinquency case, does that ever trigger a child protection
It can.
case or families then to work with CPS for whatever reason?
Yes, it can.
Okay,
So a youth engaging a juvenile delinquency, depending on the situation or the circumstances of the case, the young person's age and other
Mhm.
factors that could trigger referral to social services.
okay, perfect, thank you.
But what is not reflected in the slides that I'm providing you all with the deep brain transformation work is the reductions in the usage of out-of-home placement and EJJ petitions for young people. Although we still have a long way to go in reducing racial and ethnic disparities overall in Ramsey County, I do have to applaud and lift up the fact that Ramsey County has significantly reduced the use of out-of-home placements and pushing kids further deeper into the system. However, as I noted, we still do have significant race and ethnic disparities throughout every single decision point in the youth justice system, all the way from detention admissions to out-of-home placement, to the referrals to probation, to EJJ certifications. There's significant racial and ethnic disparities that continue to exist at all those intersections.
Yeah, and we have been disturbed by these numbers for as long as I've been here, because we know that we have them and we're willing to look at them and say, how can we change them? Are they still, for counties of our size and makeup, are we still higher? And I don't justify it at all. I mean, it's what we have to for sure work on. I think people thought they were, in the past, people thought they were really taking care of people when they really weren't. But I don't know how, I mean, it was clearly, and it shouldn't be happening. So are we still there? Are we still at those numbers that are disproportionate with other counties too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are.
So based off of the data
Yeah.
from 2024, we haven't looked at the entire year
Okay.
yet because it hasn't come to an
Yeah.
end. But we consistently see that Black youth are predominantly overrepresented in the system. And I have my data folks on the back of me, but I'm gonna go off on the limb and say anywhere between 60 to 75% on any given quarter, the JDC admissions population is filled with Black boys and Black girls. And if we want to include youth of color in general, that number creeps up to about 85 to 90% of youth of color being overrepresented in the JDC admissions data. Similar to EJJ petitions, similar to out-of-home placements, and also similar to the young people that have been referred to probation.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
May I just
Commissioner John.
add on
Yeah,
to
that's
that
just
in like the broader context that I'm glad we'll be talking about our strategic direction, that, you know, we are definitely operating in a system when the wealth of our economic mobility is so limited in the United States, when wealth is hoarded at the top. We're gonna continue to see these numbers and this desperate impacts and disparities continue to exist and persist. I'm glad that we'll be talking about strategic direction later on about, you know, continue to invest in our families and our communities for economic mobility and also intergenerational wealth building.
Well said.
Thank you.
And I'll just say that, you know, since I've started this work, I've been very intentional with lifting up those race and ethnic disparities that exist. I'll continue to do so as long as I'm allowed to be in this position and to stay here. And as our YJT stakeholders and steering committee members know, whenever we have our YJT stakeholder convening, I show that geographic graph that we have, right? Because we break down our data by race, ethnicity, geography, gender, and offense type. And so part of that work is actually identifying where our young people are coming from, what are the detaining authorities referring our young people to the JDC. And as Commissioner Zhang already alluded to earlier, a lot of our young people are being referred from the East Side area, 55106, 55117, North End area. I actually want to say about 20 to 25% of our young people are coming from those zip codes. So we're aware of it. We're having targeted programming, targeted outreach. And we're really looking forward to figuring out how we can reduce those referrals to the JDC from those zip codes.
Thank you so much for that work.
So after a decade and a half of experiencing success in the detention reform and deep end transformation, leaders in Ramsey County decided to take on youth justice transformation work a step further to look beyond just detention and the deep end and really shift focus to upstream. And this is when YJT comes into the picture. And I believe I started as a consultant in 2020 to provide services for Ramsey County in general, starting with Workforce Solutions in the county manager's office. And towards the end of that year, I started to work with Transforming Systems Together, which really took a hold of the YJT work and where it sat for some time. And so this began as an initiative within TST, but is now part of the Safety and Justice Service team, so embedded within inside of a service team. The framework of youth justice transformation represents a fundamental shift in how we approach youth justice. And it's not just about reforming what already exists, but it's about building something new that is rooted in the values of healing, equity, and opportunity for our young people. Centered on reaching our youth before they encounter the system, but having effective intervention when they do enter the system and providing pathways for success when they transition away from system involvement. And I just want to look at one of the defining features of YJT truly is its collaborative nature and collaborative approach to this work. We've brought together a wide variety of different stakeholders from across county departments, our external stakeholders, the community, and importantly, the people with lived experience, including youth and families. It's about co-creating something together that doesn't necessarily center on doing things to the community, but actually leading with doing things with the community. And I do want to just take a moment to lift up that a lot of this work wouldn't be possible without our stakeholders. I mean, even when this work was just in TST, we had to rely heavily on budgets from other departments, staff from other departments to move initiatives and programs forward. And we have a lot of support from our local law enforcement partners, not only in the city of St. Paul, but also the broader suburban networks. And I do want to acknowledge that the work that's been done in Maplewood with Lieutenant Steiner, and also the work that we've engaged in with the former police chief of North St. Paul also was very influential and continuing to move the Ray along, to review the statutes, and really to help develop the Ray 2.0. Both of them sat on that committee and helped us from a law enforcement perspective, which I thought was really unique. I've done this work across the country, and it's not common to have law enforcement at the table as an active partner.
Credit to your work. Thank you. Okay. Yes, Commissioner McMurtry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question on number 8, the confinement conditions. Is that in reference to the JDC's physical space?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
For that, has there been, because I will say it's been great having visited to hear from some of the youth there of the different programs and services. I think that they, at least when I went, had a lot of great things to say about our staff and the work that they're doing to invest in their development and making sure that they're on the right path. I will say the confinement conditions piece is one that I continue to have questions on has there been any work or potential audit of the space itself? Because, you know, when we're thinking of the mental health of youth in there, I think that physical space also has a toll and plays a role in that. So wanted to hear you all's efforts on how we can reform the physical space of the JDC.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've, so I think, just recently we've talked about using the JDC space on the first floor, to really rebuild and do some, restructuring of that. You know, we still have work to do with that space because we were thinking about more of a educational space environment, other activities within that first floor. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there. And so, but really, I think Elijah and I have had initial conversations with corrections, with Director Long around the future of sort of like renovating that space. And that takes a lot of planning, right? And budgeting. And so, but there's an opportunity there, right? We have that space. And so we have to just reimagine, but we are having initial conversations with corrections on that.
And I will add, it's nice to now have a permanent deputy county manager over the health and wellness service team, which the JDC Community Corrections falls underneath that service team. And so I think there is, I'm going to echo DCM Reyes' point that there is an opportunity for us to continue to reimagine and revision what the JDC could look like and what our plans are moving forward now that someone's in a permanent position. So looking forward to those continued conversations.
Great. Commissioner Moran and then Commissioner Devonson.
In mentioning JDC and the renovation that is needed, I know Deputy County Manager Long? Director Long. So Director Long has really wanted to they need a new space because the space that's currently there really does not accommodate the needs that we see now. But we might need to do some renovations and, but one of the things that I hear, I think, reimagining spaces could be a really great idea. I like, there's many who do like the space. It's in downtown, it's on 7th Street, it's close to transportation. maybe we can put some more spaces in there where they can get some more air, you know, to be able to go outside and things like that. I've also heard community speak to bringing in community-based organizations into those spaces too, where those resources are there, not just for the youth, but for the parents or the guardians of loved ones who need that type of support. So I'm just thinking that as you're thinking about that, and reimagining the space, that if we do always, we engage the community in what that needs to look like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, County Manager Becker.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some context that the JDC, and some commissioners might remember this, was actually on our state bonding list at one time. So it's not like it hasn't been thought through. I think we want to continue to think through our options before just jumping through, especially when we're seeing the reduced population, wanting to do things a little differently, not wanting to be so institutionalized. I think there was a little bit of even some tug and pull of like, is that really what we want? Is just a newer version of the JDC, or could we reimagine something a little more holistic and different? So
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the where I was going to Elijah's earlier thing of envisioning a time where we don't have a JDC, but knowing that there are times where like perhaps a locked earths kind of base facility or something that is more therapeutic, but then also is secure. There are times like even if somebody's not part of adjudication process, where they need to be in a safe environment, you know, so that they're there. So I don't know what that looks
Yeah.
like, but I love that's the idea,
Mhm.
instead of building another cement block. How
Yeah.
do we
Yeah.
create a therapeutic environment?
And I think similar to our conversation this afternoon is like, you know, working across multiple counties, thinking about various continuums of places to put young people, particularly locked facilities, so that we are maybe able to cater toward boys or girls or different culturally specific, but yet every county can't actually have all of those in their own county. So I think this is one of those where there's partnership and cost savings and efficiencies but yet can still be very intentional. And I think that conversation has to happen, you know, maybe at even at a District 10 or like broader, because I know it's an interest of all counties in the metro. So
Great suggestion to have it at District 10. Just historically, I'll just remember when I was early on the board and we were going to work with Hennepin County on a new detention facility. And so Tony, our colleague Tony Carter went to the meeting, and we were just, the community just erupted in opposition to another, you know, bricks and mortar facility for our kids. And so it was just such an I mean, obviously we try to talk to community a lot more. And it was just such an awakening that that's not what community wants for our kids, and it's not what we should have. And I just remember her coming back, and she probably knew a little bit more than the rest of us what she was heading into, but it was a really amazing meeting of community really speaking out against something. So I agree, we should be working with other counties on some form of, whatever that would look like, but maybe, you know, we don't want to call it a facility. I mean, not a facility, but you know, just some kind of other opportunity for our kids that need that. Yeah. So
I also
John
just
and
want to
Commissioner
add
Miller.
to this conversation that I'm glad that we are exploring those different
Yeah.
options. I know, having been on a YGT, I would actually recommend that we send the quarterly slide deck to the rest of the board. Because we actually do see in our numbers that there are kids in our current facility right now who may be released. There just aren't alternatives, right? So I really want to encourage us to, you know, continue to work upstream, rather than like investing in like our current facility that we have right now, because when we look at our daily numbers, like almost the last 15 years, it's just remained about 30 admissions, right, daily. So I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind, that we have youth who are in our current facility who may be released based off on our risk assessment inventory tool. It's just that there just aren't those alternatives, and we need to invest in those alternatives and respite.
And we have such a great research and data evaluation unit in community corrections with Ed and Claire Pillsbury that we've actually was able to take a look at the average length of how, like, the time that young people spent in the JDC. So if young people are spending 1 to 3 days, how many are spending 3 to 5 days, or how many are spending more than a week, or how many are spending a month? We have all that broken down that we can share with you. I just didn't want us to get bogged down in the conversation with data slides, so I intentionally left that out. But we can share all that data information with you all after the board workshop. Happy to do so.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay.
So moving on to discuss the youth justice transformation goals, our aim is to significantly reduce the number of young people who end up in detention, who end up in out-of-home placement, or that are referred to secure facilities. This includes those youth that are involved in juvenile probation or under extended juvenile jurisdiction as well. We're asking ourselves constantly, who really needs to be in the juvenile detention facility or in the system? And who would be better served in their community with resources being poured into them from community-based organizations, with the support of Ramsey County, but not Ramsey County being at the forefront of that transformation of that young person's life, but really leveraging the extensive networks of the young people, community-based organizations, and their families to help support and lift them up. This work is rooted in equity. We know that youth of color, especially Black youth, are overrepresented in the system, and our work in YJT is intentional about addressing the structural and institutional causes of those disparities. For us, it's about shifting the resources, power, and trust back into the communities that are most impacted. And so here's a little bit of some bullet points of some of our goals that we have. And so our main focus is to reduce secure placements, create supportive and healing environments for youth and families, to expand the usage of healing homes and therapeutic treatment homes that are community-centered and community-rooted, and then to leverage the funds that we received from the state to expand the violence prevention programs, to prioritize community-based, culturally responsive alternatives to detention, emphasis on holistic, equity-driven restorative practices that's embedded throughout every single intersection of the work that we do. And then ultimately to foster greater cross-sector collaboration, not only within the internal Ramsey County organization, but also our external partners as well, which I think we do a fairly good job of. We can always do better, but I really do pride ourselves on being able to approach this work from a collaborative nature. And we have stakeholders from all different types of agencies, backgrounds that are a part of our youth justice transformation work.
Commissioner McMurtry.
Quick question on the root causes piece. Can you speak to what are some of the root causes that you all have identified? I know that we talked a little bit today about the economic opportunity piece, and I wonder if there's already work that's being done to collaborate more with CD and some other partners at the county that does that specific work, but wanted to hear a little bit more about some of those root causes that you all specifically have seen.
Absolutely. So if it's appropriate, I'm going to take off my YJT, planning manager hat and put on my hat of being someone who provided direct services to these young people and who was once one of these young people. We notice a lot of the young people are experiencing homelessness right now, or housing instability, what we call couch surfing. So they may have a friend's couch that they can stay on for a few days, but that's not sustainable. That's not stable, which ultimately, keeps them out of school, keeps them from being able to find a job, all the things, right? If you don't have a roof over your head, a place that you can call home, and you can really have some type of strong foundation. So we experience a lot of that with our young people, just not having a sustainable housing situation. A lot of our young people are suffering from chemical dependency, mental health or unaddressed mental health needs. And I don't know which one causes the other, but oftentimes they struggle with both chemical dependency and mental health. And just not having sometimes a strong support system or network in the community. And there may be all these things happen in the community where young people can have access to these resources, but they're disconnected and they don't know what building to go to or what person to go to get the resources that they need. And so there's been a disconnect between the providers and the young people that need it and the young people that need it. And so those are just some of the things that I've noticed as someone who's provided direct services to these young people. I don't know if DCM Reyes or DCM Al, do you want to provide any additional information?
I mean, behavioral health is a big challenge right now with our young people, right? I think trying to figure out whether that's after COVID or the pandemic, I'm not sure, but it really is behavioral health you see as one of the significant root cause trending against the policing.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Miller.
Kind of to add off that, I just want to note something because I think of do you think of trends in generations and different parenting styles, different support services? And, if we go back to the slide with where we saw the increase in the years, right? Those youth are probably now becoming parents and vice versa. So you know, how I think of like, I'm never gonna do that to my kids, right? Like, you know, never gonna treat my kids how my parents treated me or how I was, you know, parented, right? But I just wanted to note maybe that, and also I like that approach that like you support the whole family, and I think I made a note here on, you know, to follow up or to ask questions about like the family coaching system, because it's really a family approach, and how can we really help the family before it gets to this point? Like, so how can you prevent the fire before it's actually a fire? And then now you're responding. So if we can come in and put the preventative work in first or do the work on that, like, and a lot of people don't, I know it's hard with prevention because you can't see an outcome right away, but down the line, you really get to see that. And I like that Commissioner Jean keeps mentioning like upstream work, like we gotta go upstream and we gotta really think of how we can maybe stop or help be proactive rather than reactive, right? So, thank you.
So now we're gonna transition to talk, was there other questions? Sorry.
No.
Okay,
Good.
now we're gonna transition to talking about some of the current projects and initiatives that we're taking on. So we take a holistic approach to serving youth and families. From a lens or a framework of prevention, intervention, and transitional support. And I don't want you to look at this and say, oh, all these things are mutually exclusive. They're not, they work together. And so just because you see a program over in the prevention category or a column doesn't mean that it also doesn't apply to your intervention or our transitional support efforts. So just want to name that. But we understand that a young person's involvement in the system is often a result of unmet needs, things like housing instability, family challenges, chemical dependency, and mental health that deeply impact their development. And we work with both internal and external partners to respond in a way that sees the full person and their circumstances, not just what they're going through at that time. And so our prevention efforts are really prioritizing youth well-being, such as mentorship, education support, job training, community engagement, and overall positive youth development to proactively support at-risk youth or youth that are involved in the system to divert them further away from criminal justice involvement. And so I'm going to list up the mobile rave. This is something that's not implemented yet. We're still working through some of the logistics on how to get this off the ground, but this is something that I'm really proud and I'm really looking forward to actually piloting it out soon, because this is going to allow us to provide law enforcement with more tools and resources on the front end. So when we engage with the young person that we know should not be in a juvenile detention facility, they would have more resources at their disposal to refer that young person to different services and ATD, to bring them back home to a parent or guardian with additional referrals for services they can follow up on. And so this will further prevent young people from going into the JDC for even 1 hour. And because we know 1 hour in the secure detention facility causes trauma. And so I'm really looking forward to standing it up and getting that piloted out in the city of Maplewood with Lieutenant Joe Steiner. We also are working with the city of St. Paul's Aspire program. Currently, right now, we're engaging 15 young people. They're engaged in boxing through Element Boxing Gym. They just took them fishing out last Saturday. I think today they're meeting at Frogtown Community Center. They're going to have some tacos and just have a community circle to talk about things that are going on in their lives. And so this is a program that's actually being led by police officers in the city of St. Paul. And the Office of Safety and Justice is just funding the activities for them and making sure that we are there as a resource to help them do their jobs.
How's that working out? Being led by the police officers.
I was skeptical at first, Commissioner Moran, and I talked with the officers, and I also came to a couple of the meetings with the young people, and they get along very, very well. They're very open and transparent with the police officers. They see them as being dependable adults in their lives, and they're just reminding me that young people don't care what the profession is that you have. They just care that you're going to be there for them. They care that you're going to be supportive and that you could be someone that's dependable. And so I was skeptical that law enforcement leading this effort. But just to see all the interactions that they have with each other, it's a lot of love in that room.
Do that transfer outside of that room into the community? Are they feeling that when they're out in the community, that support, that connection, seeing police officers without getting tense and tight, is it transferring?
I don't think so. I think it's with the officers that they've engaged with.
Yeah, and
Commissioner Down and Jevin saying,
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that connection, and I also appreciate the mobile rate that we're trying to implement and pilot, because it helps to decrease, the disparities, honestly, right? It doesn't leave it where it's gray for an officer to choose who gets to go to the JDC or who doesn't, right? It's very clear and gives a clean guidance, guardrails, basically, about who should be brought into the JDC. So as we implement that and also implement it into St. Paul, hopefully soon, that we will see those numbers of our youth and our JDC decrease.
So I'm gonna say that could be true. If what's happening inside of that room transfers back out into the streets, that those law enforcement officers are sharing that with their partners in the streets. Right, so it's not just a group that's doing it, but it becomes a practice of how to engage and encounter young people. Right, and so I was gonna say, I don't know what to do with that, but I think, it needs to translate outside of that, there needs some, the police are there not for just themselves, because they want to support the youth, right? But they want to see better outcomes, but it's not always about the youth. It could be how they're being encountered too by law enforcement. And so, I don't know, and maybe we can think about how those who are facilitating those meetings are also going back out there. Because, officers get together before they go out and they do a rah-rah, right?
Yeah.
And how you're bringing that into those spaces too.
And that's a good idea, Commissioner Moran. Thank you for lifting it up. This is new. They've been meeting informally with these young people for quite some time. And then I found out about this program through some of my networks. And I said, hey, we want to engage with this. We want to support this. This is amazing work. And so we're just now entering into a more formalized, structured program with St. Paul Aspires program. But they've been engaging with these young people informally for quite some time. And so those are things that I'll definitely consider as we continue to figure out how we can sustain this work and grow it.
Commissioner Brown,
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, what I would just add is like, what you're saying is we have to be more intentional. So, and I think the skepticism that Elijah talked about, I'm sure the youth also have that when they were engaging with the law enforcement. It took a while. You have to build trust.
Yes.
Within the community. And I think it's like also the community coming in and like it's an intentional work that needs to be done from both sides. And I think this could be like a springboard to, hey, we have been like, this is working and we need to kind of do this across the board from a community standpoint, but it has to be more intentional and has to be led.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you bringing that up, because I could just see if that was the mindset of all police officers, like where would the community be? And I think that there's room for growth there.
What's that?
Well,
Commissioner Jefferson.
yeah, I was gonna say that I think the combination of how we create spaces for youth to interact positively with any healthy adults that care about them, but for law enforcement and for law enforcement to have healthy interactions with kids, right? So it changes those perspectives on both sides, right? To be able to break down some of the stereotypes and the biases and the systemic decision-making that has led to these disparities. And while, because we're skeptical of, a pocket program here and a pocket program here and this and that, being able to transfer, right? The ability of an individual interacting on Saturdays, and having a positive interaction with these 15 individuals, that transfers then, 3 weeks later when they're in a crowded experience and community, that will transcend to everybody thinks of everybody in their higher selves and as that trusted individual, or they fall back into those stereotypes. I think Commissioner Zhang, I think we're talking about the mobile array, which is the idea of a rubric in real time that you've been testing out, and maybe talk about that, what that looks like in real time. So it empowers the officer, but also has some kind of accountability to the officer, in that the rubric that you put through in the array makes a decision of who should get into the squad car, who should get brought into the JDC, or who gets conversation, resources taken back home. That's based on a set of decision-making points, rather than I'm in suburban Ramsey County. This kid and his kids look like my kids. I feel comfortable talking to his family. Let's give him a ride home. I'm sure we can settle this like this, versus what other neighborhoods are having, right? So tell us a little bit more about how we hope that we hope people are growing and having those shifts of mindset. And in the real time, we're giving them a tool that says, and we're going to override anything that might be going on without your even awareness, and give you a decision-making tool that's more fair.
And before you answer that, I'm gonna just let Commissioner McMurtry add his comment and question maybe to that question?
It's separate from this.
Separate, sorry, then we're gonna let you.
So I'll be I'll be
Manager
very
Norris,
brief without going into the details of the rate, because I'm sure we can spend another hour and a half or
Yeah.
2 hours talking about the risk assessment
Okay.
instrument. So ideally, how this is gonna work is we're not changing anything with the rate. We're not creating a new tool or anything. We're creating an additional process or an additional step. And so when law enforcement encounters a young person in community engaging in whatever delinquency that the young person is engaging in or alleged to engage in, instead of having just take that young person down to the JDC, where the JDC does the assessment of the rate and determines that the young person can just go home, or they can go to an ATD, or they're going to be detained, law enforcement can then call the JDC ahead of time. And eventually maybe we'll have a tool or an app that they could use, who knows? But for now, the process would be that they would just call the JDC and say, hey, I have so-and-so here. This is the crime that they've committed, or I've alleged that they committed. Based off of this information, they're going to input that information that they received from law enforcement into our risk assessment tool. And the JDC staff would then say, hey, based off of the information you provided me, here's what the decision is. The decision is to release them to their parent or guardian. Here's a number that they can call. We're going to follow up. Here is a list of alternatives to detention, emergency respite shelters. They have this many beds available. You can drop them off there. Someone from the county will follow up. Or based off of what you provided us, they've met the eligibility requirements to be detained in the JDC. You can proceed with bringing them down to the facility. So ideally, that's how it works. It's not going to cost a whole lot of money to do that. Really, it's just going to rely on the partnerships that we build with the law enforcement agencies and them just trusting the tool.
Great.
They'll probably prefer that, Commissioner McMurtry.
And this is real quick, because I think you all have really outlined the amazing, truly transformative work that you all are doing with the JDC. Seeing that graph also makes me, and knowing the conversations we've had over the last few months also has me thinking about the ADC and the numbers that we've seen there. Have there been, and I understand of the efforts that we are taking to improve the population and a number of the issues, but are there takeaways from the work you all are doing here that you have considered transferring over to the work at the ADC?
That's a great question. And I think some of it is there. I mean, particularly around mental health supports system. I think that, we have like a Roots Wellness program who are providing pretrial navigation services for people in the pretrial, process. Who are at the ADC, but there's opportunity for more partnerships here within the ADC, and that's a really good point. Yeah,
Absolutely. No, it's something that I've been thinking about throughout this presentation, and just want to encourage us to further think of incorporating into our work at the ADC, because we know what the numbers are currently, and if we can figure out ways to further help the people who are there and even prevent them from even getting to that point, I think will be beneficial to us as a community in the long run.
definitely.
There's one thing that we know is sure, kids grow into be adults, so if
Absolutely.
we don't help them now, we will help them later.
Yeah. Yes, Commissioner Miller.
My question kind of piggybacks off of Commissioner McMurtry's question. Have we seen an increase in the youth that would be admitted to our JDCs now going to the ADC? Does that make sense, what I'm
Yeah.
asking? Like, they know,
Yeah.
that, because I know in probation, we still serve them from 18 to 24, but our jail system doesn't. So if you're 18 years old and you get whatever stopped or however, they're not gonna do that assessment with the 18-year-old. They're just, you're just going to jail, right?
Yeah. So you're requesting the data for.
Well, I'm just wondering, like,
position.
how, like, that connects maybe as well, and if there's a way we could use some of the systems that we're using for the JDC to the ADC. I'm not sure what I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
But it's,
We have to put some data.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be great to see.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner
So
Jensen.
I was gonna say too, I mean, one of the questions I was gonna save to last, but I'll just throw this in here is, the call for public safety. Sometimes comes from a place of fear mongering, and with the rhetoric that's been coming from the places on high, there's permission to go to the darkest spaces. And that is for community members, for for folks in the system, for law enforcement, for public, I mean, for all sorts of, anybody who's calling 911 instead of just saying, hey, kids, it's probably time to go home. Anything, you know, all of the things are happening. And I guess one of the concerns that I have is if we're not tracking the data to be able to capture the success, then how do we bring people along on this journey who aren't already there as far as the political will to continue backing these kinds of things? And I don't mean the people at the table here, I mean the greater. So I guess for me, I think picking up a strand of what Commissioner Miller was talking about is, as we're doing this work, when we have folks who in 2000 would have been sent to the JDC and started as an incarceration history, which we knew statistically was part of those journeys, right? If now we know that folks are being bumping up into our system, but now experiencing social supports, experiencing mental health supports, experiencing family supports, probation versus being in custody and stuff like that. Do we have any sense that those touches that we can show through the data, both quantitative and qualitative, 15 years later meant that they weren't in our ADC? And I don't mean just that they weren't in our ADC because of the systemic over policing and decision points along the way, but because their lives individually were changed and that they did get the wraparound supports. And so their behaviors and their successes and their opportunities in life allowed a different trajectory. Is that something that, I mean, that may be bigger than this work, but I'm just wondering if that's something we're thinking ahead to say, as we implement something like a mobile ray, that, or these other kind of pieces, so that we can, it's not just anecdotal, right?
I would be interested to pilot something like that out, a data study on a micro level, but I can speak to the national work that's been done, and I have some national resources I can share with you from the Annie Casey Foundation that does suggest or does support your claim that, you know, with minimum touches, young people don't return back to the system. Young people don't continue to engage in delinquency. In fact, most young people age out of delinquency without ever having to go into an out-of-home placement or being EJJ certified. So we also have to be very conscious that we don't want to provide too many services to a young person that may not need it. And so it's also about understanding the individualized needs of that young person and really determining what is the appropriate amount of touches of the system that young person should have. Most young people would just go into the JDC or encountering that law enforcement officer and being able to go home to their parent or guardian and having that resource support that they're connected to now. They don't engage in delinquency any further beyond that. And so there are national trend studies that can back that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think great question and observation. I think knowing the research and the best practices national, I think it is a really good point in really understanding our data and our trajectory. And I think, you know, Elijah keeps the data, right? And there's data there. But I think tracking that data would be really interesting, and really working with our evaluation team to develop that as part of our broader strategies.
And I say that with the caveat of also knowing that people flow through the world, and so that somebody who maybe did have that positive impact by this alternate way of approaching them are then benefiting from a wonderful life in Montana, not Minnesota. And we won't ever be able to know that what good or bad happened because of their interactions with us. I don't want to put that kind of, but I understand that. Yeah, but
Yeah, Chair, for the prevention and intervention, this was maybe a year or two ago. Elijah, when you had presented under workforce as well about something similar to like Project Peace or Pay for Peace.
You're speaking of the Power Within Us program, and I'm glad you allowed me to talk about that. I know we're probably getting close to time. I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I did want to lift up the Power Within Us program, which was a collaborative effort, and at that time was led by the director of Workforce Solutions, Wayne Beck, who's not a county manager. But Power Within Us is actually something that I really appreciate, and I try to lift up in the space that I'm in, because it showed the collaborative efforts of YJT. We had young people there that really helped design the program. They named it, they created the incentives, They helped create the type of partners that they wanted in the room, the type of outcomes that they wanted. These are all justice impacted young people. And this program actually is tailored to support young people that are on probation. And so all the young people that are being serviced by Power Within Us are young people on probation. And there are efforts right now for us to expand that into, well, I think they've already expanded it into the JDC. I think they're meeting quarterly or every other month in the JDC currently. And I know that there's plans also to make this available to the adults in the ADC as well. And just a quick overview of Power Within Us, they bring young people together that are system impacted to really have access to community providers around employment, workforce training. Young people can get access to wraparound resources. So if they need work boots or if they need the bus pass, there's providers in that space that provide those type of resources to them. What else am I missing? Educational support if they're interested in going back to school or they need some assistance with getting enrolled back into high school or pursuing a GED. There's providers in that space that can help them on that pathway that they decide. It's really cool. We also incentivize the young people to show up. So they get an incentive for being there. They get an incentive for completing all the paperwork or walking around the room and connecting with the folks in the room. And then they also get another incentive for following up and making an appointment with someone. So if I'm interested in going back to school and I need to get a GED first, I met with a counselor at the high school to figure out what that pathway is for me. There's another incentive that you get once you confirm that appointment and you show up to it. And so that's a great program. There's also the bench was involved in that. The courts was there as well. So don't want to leave out our judicial partners as well. County Manager Becker, am I missing anything on that one?
That's the famous project that got written on the back of a napkin. So, yeah, so.
Really
yeah.
excited. I know that people were really impressed when in the next slide, you're gonna talk about the NACO or the Annie Casey cohort that came and they loved that program.
Yes, and so we had the opportunity this past June to actually host the County for Juvenile Justice Innovation Network, which is a national cohort through the peer exchange from NACO to highlight our county's transformational work in youth justice. During that time that we spent with the cohort members, we were able to provide cohort members with a live demonstration of our Ray 2.0. So they actually got to go through, and we had a young person who's not actually a part of the system, but we've inputted that information, that data, so they can see in real time how we come to the decisions to either release that young person to a parent or guardian, release to an ATD, or to detain, which is, I want to just pause for a second too. Like, this is actually pretty unique. A lot of jurisdictions don't have a detention screening tool. In fact, the state of Minnesota just passed the mandate recently where all jurisdictions now in Minnesota will have to have some type of a detention screening tool that they're going to have to use at the door of detention. And so Ramsey County really was a leader at this, in 2009, coming together to say, hey, we just can't keep admitting all these kids to the JDC that don't need to be here. We need to develop an objective screening tool to help us make that decision of what is the appropriate setting for those young people that are engaging in delinquency. And so I get to travel around to other jurisdictions all the time. And there's still a lot of counties that don't have a detention screening tool that they use. All young people that are brought to the detention facility are being detained. And so this is not common everywhere in the country. We've also did a live demonstration of the Power Within Us program. We toured a few community assets, including the George Washington Carver Center, Indigenous Roots, and then also the neighborhood house on the west side. We were able to engage the cohort members in presentations from the county attorney's office that highlighted the restorative justice, diversion, and the reimagining youth justice work that they're engaged in. And we also got to hear from our law enforcement partners. We had a presentation from Lieutenant Steiner in the city of Maplewood on how the work of YDT has led to transformation within their department. And we understand our vision is bold. We imagine a youth justice system that doesn't rely on confinement as a default response for youth engaging in delinquency. We really want a youth justice system that centers the well-being, accountability, and restoration of our young people, and one that sees young people not as problems to be fixed, but as individuals full of potential, deserving of investment and support. And before I turn it over to Deputy County Manager Gloria Reyes to speak to the alignment of YJT and the county priorities and the next steps for YJT, I just want to end my portion of talking with the African proverb that I literally say to myself every morning before I wake up and go do this work. And that is, a youth that's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I'm going to say it again. A youth that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I hope that that resonates with you all as you continue to do this work and invest in the work of youth justice transformation. Thank you.
Wow.
That's
Well,
great.
Director Norris Holiday, I know we've been using first names sometimes, but we want to just thank you for all your work. I will just say that I was lucky to sit in on this cohort when they came here. And of course, The Annie Casey Foundation funded the cohort, even though, because the grant that it was supposed to use got cut by the federal government. Annie Casey feels so strongly in this that they stepped in and funded the entire thing, because they, of course, are so and, you know, impressed, and rightfully so, with the work of Director Norris Holiday. He, you know, is amazing in the work that he's been doing, and the work that all the partners and everybody's been doing. But that's what all of the cohort members are like, how do we get this? And they said, well, you get an Elijah to come in and work with you, but just thank you for really, you know, doing all of this work with all of your partners. I know you're not doing it alone, but just thank you. And it was really felt like by members around the country about the immense the enormity and the transformation of this work in our county, and the work that we need to continue to do. So I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for that. And we'll let
Yeah.
Deputy County Manager.
Not much left. I think we just wanted to share that, you know, our youth justice transformation is sits under our justice transformation strategic priority. You know, residents first, racial equity, justice system transformation, holistic support. It crosses all of our, it's aligned with all of our county strategic priorities as well. We continue to seek to deepen a collaboration between service teams and, you know, continually do continuous improvement to make sure the right people are at the table and working toward one Ramsey County. And really move away from silos. This work is really important. We understand, as Commissioner Miller mentioned, it's family, right? It is really focusing on family. We are making stronger connections between areas that can invest and stabilize youth and families at every intersection of, you know, system engagement, prioritizing prevention and diversion through upstream investment, and providing more effective intervention, programming and resources for youth in the deep end of the system. We are, actually, I'm going to pass it over to County Manager Becker, if you wanted to talk about sort of bigger picture, our priority moving forward.
Yeah, so thank you, Deputy County Manager. Thank you to everybody for all their work, especially all the people in the room. As you can see, there's lots of folks involved and lots of people who aren't here, community partners. One of the things that I've been working on with both the Deputy County Managers is this, and I've talked to some of you as commissioners individually too, about the challenge for us to kind of intersect these two service teams in our work across the board. And so one of the things that we're going to do, and I think our lunch session is about strategic priorities, but under the justice transformation strategic priority, we're going to land a more comprehensive work plan that will be a compilation of all the work that's happening. Because just as Gloria and I were working, we're like, there's like 15 of these things, and like who's doing what, and who's the sponsor, and who are the governance. And so I think, you know, a high bar, you know, we have something like the Climate Equity Action Plan. We have the, you know, ECI plan. This kind of quick version of this is not going to be quite like those kind of plans, but we just need to get some of the things on paper and sort of aligned into some clear roles and responsibilities. And much of the work has been already community engaged. So I don't think this would be one of those moments where community is going to want us to say, let's start over and like, let's start with a blank piece of paper, right? So we're not going to do that. So that's, so one thing I'm really excited about is we're going to use Christy Cobbs. You've got to hear from her a little bit. She has experience from many years in the corrections department, but we're going to borrow her for a little bit from Workforce Solutions to help kind of lead the creation of that plan. So we actually have a playbook by which to work from. And that'll really help for a variety of things, both for DCMs and their leadership and working with teams, but also as we talk about the work and measure the work, and for you guys to know where you can engage in the work too. So we hope to have that done before the end of the year and bring it back. So you can look at the full compilation. It could be everything from adult all the way to youth, everything that's under justice transformation. You know, as kind of smaller, like the Burns cohort in some ways, all the way to ARI, like everything in between, youth, adults, intersecting our facilities, you know, because when you think about it, you guys are asking all the right questions around how we're trying to maybe take some learnings from one area to another, but when we don't see them mapped together, we actually can't see where the dots are possible. So that's coming. And I'm grateful for Christie to say yes, and then also for the DCMs to be really willing to kind of lay that groundwork. So we'll be expecting everyone who intersects the work to kind of contribute your expertise in sort of building that work plan.
And I'm so appreciative of this great conversation we've been having. I'm gonna let Commissioner Moran also make a comment, but I just appreciate that, our request to get the information that those members of the YJT, which is Commissioner Moran, Commissioner Jean, and Commissioner Jevon Singh, who get to sit on that, and I know we're all invited, we could all sit in on it if we want, but we would really love this, we want this information, and just to thank my colleagues for your more in-depth work on this, and we all care about it so much, as you know. So Commissioner.
Yeah, we do. So no responses to this. And just some thoughts I've been thinking as we've been going through this. One of the things that was asked is the root causes. And we specifically said homelessness, chemical, substance, mental health, behavior health, right? Where we don't have enough support. And so when we open up, the first thing I thought about was, I have a few things, like just my thoughts. For you, the planning manager, around safety and justice. So immediately I wrote safety, justice, and healing. Because I think we have to heal our young people to move them to, right? And if it's not intentional, we still look at a lot of other things. But so I just added that. It was a thought that I thought. And then when we came to like the committees and the work groups, I wrote down healing through restorative justice as a 6-1. And maybe we can eliminate, I don't know. 5 is always a good solid number, but. And then I thought about, we had like the community-based organization as linked as, County Manager Becker was talking about, how we become more coordinated in what we work because we're all doing something. And so like for the community-based organization, something I'm thinking about heading on Ramsey County too is like, who's missing from the table, right? And so, with the organizations, these are all great organizations. I know about all of them, but what is missing is, do they any focus on mental health, behavior health, substance use, homelessness? Is anyone at the table? So who is missing from the table right now that we need to think about so that we can be more coordinated in the work that we're doing? And I think I have one last number 4. 1, 2, 3. Put on number 4. It's here. Where's that? 4. And I know you said these all interconnected when we looked at the current projects and initiatives, but for the transitional support, we have prevention dollars there. I think they can go upstream and be prevention dollars up front. And then looking at the reentry, the expansion of individualized support funds. Again, we can put that up front too, and maybe do some balance there where we're using the dollars, because the dollars are a reflection of the values of the city hall.
Good point.
So those were my thoughts as we were going through this.
Wow, no, thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Moran. I think we could all spend a lot more time thinking about this and talking about this. It's clearly, as I said before, an area that we're all deeply concerned with, committed to, and interested in, and appreciative of the work that you're all doing. Keep on keeping on doing the good work. I love your quote that you say to yourself every day, Director Norris Holiday. So we'll have to get it in. We'll say it one more time to end our workshop. But thank you all, and then you'll have a few minutes before we're going to head into our noon workshop.
So it's an African proverb, and it is, a child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to fill its warmth.
Yeah, I think we can all remember that. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and this workshop.
Send it to us.
I should have put it right there. David.
Yeah, then write it. Yeah, put it on the workshop. Put it on your presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Great work, Elijah. You're doing.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.